look at Romans 12, 1 and 2 this morning. It's probably a very familiar verse. You probably know it as it was written like this. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. When I study God's Word, I like to also go to the Message. Back in my day, it was like the Living Bible or Good News for Modern Man. Well, now we have the Message. And I like the way this passage is from Eugene Peterson's version of the Message. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity. God brings the best out of you. Develop well-formed maturity in you. There was a little girl. She was born in a small town in southern Michigan. She sang her very first solo when she was 4 years old at a Christmas pageant. She lived on the same block as her grandma, just around the corner. When she was 7 years old, her mother and her older brother went to a school function. While she was playing quietly with her dolls, she heard her father call her. He summoned her to come to the bathroom, which she dutifully did. She entered the room. He took her hand. He proceeded to move it towards his private part. She pulled back. She began to cry. She knew it wasn't right. She refused to do it. He began to cry also. And through those tears, he pleaded with her not to tell her mother. That little girl was me. From that time forward, the image of a good father was tainted. When my mother returned home that night, and she came into my bedroom to kiss me goodnight, I told my mother what had happened, and she vowed to me then that she would never leave me home alone again with him. And she was faithful to that vow. Because Mom was a victim. She was a victim of emotional, physical violence, and emotional and mental abuse at the hands of my dad. She didn't confront him about what he had done because she was fearful. After 33 years of marriage, my parents finally divorced. Fast forward to when I was 33 years old. I was living in Fresno at the time. My father had remarried, but he continued to have psychological problems. His new wife had kicked him out. And so he called to see if he could come out for a visit. I told him no, not until you get some help. He was suicidal at the time, and I was concerned that I might have pushed him over the edge. My brother at the time was going through a lot of counseling, and his calls were very painful. I felt like he was projecting a lot of what he'd experienced and who he was onto me. And so I was carrying just a lot right then at that time. And I was the mother of 2 young children, a daughter in kindergarten and a son who was 3 years old. On one school morning, my daughter was to go in and brush her teeth to get ready for school. I was putting the dishes away in the dishwasher, and I heard a lot of fun commotion in the hallway. So I walked around the hall from the kitchen, and I said, "Jen, get your teeth brushed. We have to leave for school soon." In the bathroom she went. I went back to the dishes. Wasn't very long. And the voices summoned me back into the hallway once again. And I said, "Get your teeth brushed." And I hit the wall with my hand. I mean what I'm saying, get it done. We have to leave very soon. I went back to the dishes. She went back to the bathroom. It wasn't long. And once again, I went back into the hall. This time, and I won't do it here, I took my foot and I hit the wall. "Get in there and get your teeth brushed." And they just stood there and stared at me. I kicked the wall again. I melted to the floor and started crying. They're standing there staring at me. I'm crawling over to the wall unit where the phone was. I pick it up. I call my husband. I'm in tears. He goes, "You're crying. What happened?" "I'm just like my dad. I'm just like my dad. I'm violent. I hit the wall and put a hole in it." "Why did you put a hole in the wall? What happened?" "I'm mad at my kids." I said, "Jenny's not getting her teeth brushed. That's no big deal, really. I put a hole in the wall. I'm just like my dad." Brenda, what are the kids doing? They're staring at me. What do you think they're doing? "Did you hit them?" "No, I didn't hit them. I'm not going to lay a hand on them. I hit the wall with my hand, and I couldn't get their attention, so then I hit them with my feet." Brenda, you are not like your dad. I'm just saying, well, you didn't hit the kids. You've been going through a lot. Your dad's calling, he's suicidal. Your brother's calling, and he's telling you how you're in so much denial and how sick you are. You're a mother of young children. You're a mom of young children. It's just overwhelming right now. Tonight, when I get home, we're going to take a drive over to Orchard Supply Hardware. And do you know that there's a little box there? It's even called Wall Doctor. And so, Jenny didn't go to school that day because I just wanted to make sure they were all right, but I was convinced I had worked them for life. And I'm thinking, I will never share this story with anybody. This is so humiliating. Who wants to admit that they did something like that? was then that I sought my second counseling experience. The first time was when I was in 4th grade, and we went as a family, and my brother was having problems with an ulcer. And I remember on one drive, it was over about 45 miles from where I lived in Battle Creek. You probably all know about Battle Creek. That's where Kellogg's cereal comes out of. Well, we went to a counselor there. And the counselor was addressing the issues in our family. And he asked me a very direct question. And as a child in 4th grade, I didn't necessarily have the filters thinking that, oh, I probably should be careful how I answer that, because who knows what could happen. So instead, I answered the question just as directly as he asked it, and I knew right away I was in trouble. All the way home, for 45 miles, I feared for my life. I thought, Dad is driving so erratically, and he's so angry for my being honest. If I make it home alive, it's going to be a miracle. So fast forward to Fresno, and at the time of hitting the wall, I just wanted to make sure that if my dad did commit suicide, I wasn't going to carry the guilt that it was my fault. And so our pastor at the time in Fresno, his wife was a marriage and family counselor, so I made an appointment to meet with her and shared my whole life story, even what I shared with you this morning. And we talked a lot about anger. It's not something that was modeled well for me. And it's always been an emotion that I'm uncomfortable with. And I've always tried to keep it under control. Maybe sometimes to my detriment. There are times to be angry. But it's what we do with that anger. And you've probably heard that depression is anger turned inward. And I struggled with that too throughout my life. While I was in Fresno, actually, let me jump back. While I was living in Wisconsin, a pastor friend, on an occasion when my dad had come up for a visit and was violent towards us, and I wouldn't even let him in the house, the pastor came over and sat with him on my front porch and talked to him to calm him down. And Pastor Dave at that time recommended to me a book called Healing for Damaged Emotions. And shortly after getting that book, we moved to Fresno. And that book really made a profound impact on me. It's like it was written for me. And so I started listening to Focus on the Family on the radio and what was then the Minerva Meyer Clinic, and I listened to all their broadcasts. And I hear people like Stormy Omardian or others talk about their experiences of abuse as children. And it hit home. And I knew I had some work to do. That my brother wasn't entirely wrong. We were two different individuals. And, you can live in the same house and experience things a little bit differently or handle things differently. And as a little kid, I was the one to go running through the backyard. We didn't have fences like we do here. And I'd go over and talk to a neighbor, and I'd just talk about everything that went on. Again, no filter. But apparently that was therapy for me. And I got it out, and I didn't hang on to it, and I didn't manifest some of the same behaviors that my brother did. When I was a freshman at Trinity College, which is affiliated with our church denomination, I wanted to study psychology. I wanted to better understand why my family was the way it was and why the stories that I heard about a grandfather. And I wondered, okay, that's one generation. How many generations does this go back? So I wanted to study psychology. at a very early age, I had been exposed to some things that made me sensitive to that area. My mother's father, when she was a junior in high school, had a mental breakdown. He'd been doing just fine, and all of a sudden, he was chasing my grandmother around the house with a butcher knife. And my mom, then a junior in high school, grabbed a hold of that knife and told him, "You lay one hand on Mom, and you're going to be sorry." And they immediately called my uncle, and they took my grandfather over to Kalamazoo, Michigan. Yes, there really is a Kalamazoo. And he was admitted to the state hospital there. He never came home. He was there 27 years. And I went as a little girl to visit him from the time I was very young. I mean, he was there. And I remember my last visit, I was 11 years old when he passed away a year later. My grandmother, the grandmother whose husband was in the institution, she was a nursery kitchen cook at the hospital for the mentally disabled in my hometown. And so I'd go out to pick her up because she didn't drive. Mom would be the driver and I'd go along. And so I'd visit Grandma in the nursery kitchen. And of course, I was exposed sometimes to seeing the kids and even some of the adults who were mentally disabled. So those kinds of things exposed me early on to having a heart and compassion for those that struggle. Well, I only attended Trinity for 1 year, partly because I was putting myself through school, and at that time it cost $4,000 to go to Trinity. I think today for 1 year it's $40,000 at least. Well, I was putting myself through school, and what guy is going to want to marry a woman who has $16,000 worth of debt? So I better go home, and I better go to the state school, and, I won't have near as many debts. I'll still have some, but I have to take out student loans and whatnot. And I also started to question, am I smart enough to go into psychology? And if I'm doing it at a secular school, what kind of an education am I going to get? And what am I going to have to expose about my family, about myself? And I've always had a love for education, so I started studying education. I studied elementary education, I studied early childhood education, and I studied special education, but I still hadn't gotten my degree. So fast forward now to 1994, when I finally graduated from Chico with a BA in psychology. Numerous relocations with my husband's career have kept me from further pursuing my education, partly because I wanted my focus to be on my own family, not have a setting where you can help some other family. It's impossible to put a lifetime to date of growth into maybe 20 minutes. And like you, each of us, I am a work in progress. I continue to learn, I continue to grow, I continue to be challenged. I continue to revisit some of those old lessons. The renewal of the mind is what I see as my life journey. It begins with the concept of God as my Father, seeing a healthy perspective, not a tainted one. It then proceeds to dealing with the father of lies. And so I've asked Noel to pass out to you some handouts that I want to just share briefly. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink here. Satan has lies that he wants us to believe. He wants to keep each of us from becoming who God wants and desires for us to be. I shared with you in the handout some of the lies we believe and the truths that we must believe. These are things that I look back at quite frequently. I have found them helpful in my journey of renewing my mind and heart. And along with that, I shared a list of scriptures. I think I did. Maybe they didn't. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure that they gave that out. Anyway, I'll get that to you next month. I want to encourage you to take this list and use it as part of your quiet time with the Lord to reflect on them. And I want to share with you, we're not going to go through the whole list. Finally there, the things that I have struggled with from the list. Pardon me, I'm a little disorganized here. I may have turned a page too soon. Let me just look at the list. I can come up with them, I'm sure. In the lies that we believe, let's look at that list. I must be perfect. That's what I struggle with. I struggle with it less than I used to, but it's still there a little bit. I recently, and you'll see on the prayer sheets, shared that I have a prayer request for some family relationships. I wish I could say I was perfect in how I dealt with that situation. I wasn't. I have been deeply, deeply hurt to the point that right now we can't see our grandchildren or even talk to them. Both of us, both parties are wrong, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what I did. I can't make anyone else responsible or feel responsible for what they do, but I do have a responsibility for myself, and I have not been perfect. Worldly lies. Life should be easy. No, it's not easy. Life is difficult. Life can be very messy. My husband and I get along pretty good, so we don't really have a lot of issues there, fortunately. Fortunately, God gave me a godly man that, let me tell you this story. When we did see our granddaughter about 5 years ago, the first thing she said to me when we got into the car was, "My mommy says you're not very nice." Ooh, ouch. Well, sweetie, I try to be nice. Sometimes when people don't agree with each other, you can think that they're not very nice. I'm really sorry she feels that way. I certainly am going to try and be nice as much as I can. Grandma, do you and Grandma fight? Mike and I looked at each other and we said, if you mean screaming at each other, throwing things at each other, hitting each other, breaking things when we're fighting, no. Do our voices get a little loud sometimes? Yeah. But we don't scream. We really do try to talk things through. And that has been true our entire married life. I was talking to Mike the other night in preparation for this, and I said, how many times do you think we really had a good fight? And he said, in 43 years, probably 3. And I thought, So my daughter is talking to us right now, and so I asked her, I said, what She goes, well, just one really sticks out, and you and Dad had gone into the bedroom and you shut the door, and I remember this, and she was knocking on, are you guys okay? You know, and we were just talking a little loud. Distortion lies. We can make things mountains out of a molehill. We can take things personally. I think one of the things that I really had to work on overcoming is seeing everything as black and white. There are black and whites. There are absolutes, but not everything is so black and white. You can miss the forest for the trees. Religious lies. God's love must be earned. No, it does not need to be earned. He has given His love and His grace freely. Because I'm a Christian, God will protect me from pain and suffering. That's a lie. We will encounter pain and suffering. All my problems are caused by my sins. No, they're not. Stuff happens. It's my Christian duty to meet all the needs of others. How many of us ladies can identify with that one? It's hard to say no, isn't it? We feel like an opportunity presented is always an opportunity to say yes. It's not always healthy to do that. We get burned out, or we get resentful. A good Christian doesn't feel angry, anxious, or depressed. That is a live belch straight out of hell. And we need to recognize that. God can't use me unless I'm spiritually strong. I thought about that as I thought about getting up here this day and praying over the last month that the Lord would just really use this time of my sharing to work in me, but also to work in you. But boy, He had a lot of harder work to do on me this month because of what's been going on. Let's look at the truths we must believe. To err is human. What should have happened, did. How many times do we say, oh, that shouldn't have happened? You can't please everyone. And ladies, we can. Here's the truth we need to believe, that we're all going to die. The truth that the virtue lies in the struggle, not the prize. Think about that one for a moment. You are not entitled. There is no gain without pain. That's a tough one, but you know what? I'm so glad for the pain. It's not pleasant when you're going through it, but it's always good to look back and go, I understand now. Your childhood isn't over. Think about that one. The experiences we had as children still flavor who we are today. Emotional problems are good. Life is difficult. You reap what you sow. Ouch. That one hurt. I definitely can identify with that one this month. The lies you believe and the truths you must believe are from a book, 2 books actually, by Dr. Chris Thurman. He was featured on the Nerthmeyer Clinic when that was around. And the book is still available, and I highly recommend it. It's one of them that I have kept in my library, and I even have it on my phone or my computer so I can listen to it when I'm working around the house. Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. David Townsend, you've probably heard of, they wrote the book Boundaries. That's been a very popular book over the last decade or so. And they also wrote a book called 12 Christian Beliefs That Can Drive You Crazy. And I'd like to look at those this morning, too. They kind of go along with the other things, but it's selfish to have my own needs met. That's a crazy belief. It's not selfish. How many of you have flown? Raise your hand, have you flown? How many of you remember the instruction to put the mask on yourself first before you assist anyone else? Maybe we need to go through life all the time thinking about the mask dropping down and how we need to take care of ourselves before we try and take care of everybody and everything around us. If I'm spiritual enough, I will not have pain or sinfulness. No, you know what? You're going to get attacked a whole lot more when you're trying to walk right. Boy, do I know that one from this month. If I change my behavior, I'm going to grow spiritually and emotionally. Not necessarily. It depends on how you're changing your behavior. I just need to give it all to the Lord. Don't you just hate that one? Doesn't it drive you crazy when you're sharing with a friend, like I have shared with you this morning? Oh, Brenda, you just need to give it to the Lord. No, maybe I need to talk to a counselor. Maybe I need to talk to my spouse or the minister or one of my good friends. You know, and I did that yesterday. After our crafting time, 3 other ladies were left. And I shared with them very honestly the things that have been going on over the last month, the things I had written. I should have shared those things with them before I had sent them off, because maybe I wouldn't have sent them off. One day I'm going to be finished with recovery. Yeah, one day, but that day is going to be when we see Jesus face to face. We are still in a journey of recovering, ladies. We're still in that journey of having our minds and our hearts renewed. The Christian belief that we should leave the past behind is not good counsel. If I believed that way, I wouldn't be here this morning sharing with you. My past has shaped who I am. And I honestly came to the place a few years ago where I finally thanked God for it. Not that it was right, but I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't experienced what I did. And so He can take all things and use them for good. If I have God, I don't need people. That's not necessarily good advice. We need each other. We need community. We were created to be relational. That begins with God Himself. He wants a relationship with us. And He wants us to be related to each other. Shoulds are good. We already kind of talked on that one a little bit. Guilt and shame are good for me. No, you need to resolve things. You don't have to carry the guilt and the shame your entire life. if I make right choices, I will grow spiritually. No. You can make right choices and not change at all. It really is a matter of our heart. Just doing the right thing is more important than why I do it. No, we need to know why we do what we do. If I know the truth, I will grow. You know, we can have a lot of head knowledge, but those 18 inches between our soul and our brain, you know, it's really not necessarily 18 inches, but anyway. It needs to transform our hearts and minds. Since retiring from working in the church office, I have put my energies full-time into being a full-time homemaker and opening my home to my scrapbook and card-making nook. And I've said this before, this isn't anything new, but the nook isn't just about crafting. It's about creating friendships. It's about sharing Jesus with others. It's about encouraging other people in their journeys. I don't have a shingle outside my front door that says, Dr. Brenda. I do have a little plaque in my nook that says group therapy. And sometimes my self-esteem suffers a little bit, thinking, oh, I could have done this, or I could have done that. My husband reminds me that I use my psychology all the time in our relationship, in the things that I do. And I use it on myself, too. And he's not finished with me yet. I'm still growing. I'm still in the process. Since 2009, I started journaling, and I did it publicly. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but overall, I have gotten a lot of good feedback from people. And I've gone back from time to time, and I've revisited those blogs. And I think it is a good thing to journal, whether they're public or not, because it reminds you of where you've been. And it reminds you of where you still want to be. And so, I'm not where I want to be yet. And thank God it's not just up to me to make it happen. He's going to continue to orchestrate my life. He's going to continue to bring people and experiences into my life to make me more like Him. It may be a struggle sometimes, but He's going to continue to do it. He's a God of hope. He's a God of healing. He's a God of grace. And so, ladies, this morning, I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to share a glimpse of who I am and who I believe God wants each one of us to be in our relationship to Him and to one another. Let's pray.